Hi, welcome to the Creo Primer video tutorial. So the idea of this tutorial is that it gives you a video guide to the manual that you have. I really do recommend that you go through this Creo Primer manual. It gives you lots of hints and tips for using the software. But in this video I'm just going to go through how you create the cube, so the yellow cube you can see on screen, the strut, and then the assembly. Now it's important to remember that I'm not going to go through every single step as it's detailed in the manual, but hopefully what it will do is give you sort of visual aid if you find that you get stuck at anywhere whilst reading the booklet. Okay, so I'm going to go and open up the Creo software. Okay, so to start the program you need to come to computer's desktop, and whether you're on a university computer or you install it on your own machine, it's important that we open up the correct program. So if we're 3D modeling, we need to look for a program called Creo Parametric. So if you have a look in the Windows Start menu and then you scroll down, what you'll find is PTC. So this is the manufacturer for the software. And if you go down, you'll see these various different programs. Now it's really important that you click Creo Parametric. Okay, so version 5 is the latest one that's available for use. So if you click on Creo Parametric and just wait for it to load up. Okay, so when you first load it up you'll end up with these sort of extra dialog boxes, so you can just get rid of this, it's not needed. Okay, and let's make this full screen. Okay, so once you've got Creo loaded up, what we really need to do is make sure that when we save any files, we save them in the correct location. So if you're on a university computer, we recommend that you do not store them locally to the machine. We recommend that you either use a USB stick or you save it to your network storage. Okay, on this machine I'll be storing them locally to the hard drive as it's a personal machine. And to do that, what we do is we click on this select working directory, and this basically tells Creo where you want it to save any files that you generate. So in this case I just have a folder on my desktop and I'm going to put it in this primer folder here. Okay, so that means that anything that I generate during the session will be saved automatically to that folder. You can change the location at a later date, but it just makes life a little bit easier if we do it at the start. Okay, so to start creating our first component, I'm just going to click on New, and you'll see a new little dialog box open up, and what we need to do is click on Parts. So that just means that we're going to create one of the individual parts. So the first one that I'm going to be working on is the cube. So I'm going to give this a relevant name, and it's vitally important that we untick the default template. Okay, so Creo is obviously an American piece of software, and its units out of the box are inches, and we need to change those to millimeters. Okay, so you can see here it's saying units are in inches. If we just scroll down a little bit, we'll find millimeters just here. If you do select the wrong one by accident, we can change it at a later date, but it's a good habit to get into, to just start by setting the correct units. Okay, so once we do that, we're now in the Creo environment, and there are a few mouse controls that you need to get to grips with. So the first one is zoom. So if you use the scroll wheel on your mouse, if you scroll, you can zoom in and out of the view. Okay. We can also spin the screen. So if you hold down the middle mouse button, so the scroll wheel, and then move the mouse, you'll see that we rotate the screen, so you can see that the datum planes are moving around. Once you have some geometry, this becomes a little bit more obvious. We can also pan the screen, so if we use the middle mouse button and press shift, so press shift and middle mouse, we can move the screen around, and we can also spin components. So if you press Control, press the middle mouse button and then move it side to side, you'll see that you spin about that point. You can also zoom using that method, so if your zoom wheel is not working, you can press Control middle mouse button and you can pull this, move up and down with the mouse, and that will zoom the screen in or out. Okay. So the first thing that I need to do for this is draw some geometry, and to do that in Creo we use this tool called the sketch tool. So the idea in Creo is that we draw a sketch and then we basically extrude out that sketch to turn it into a 3D shape. So we start off with a 2D shape and extrude it to make it into a 3D shape. So if you click on sketch, a new dialog box coming up, it's basically asking you where you want to place this sketch. So Creo gives us some predefined planes, and so I'm just going to select one of those. It doesn't really matter which one you pick for this component. Okay, so you see that I've got that one highlighted. Everything's green. In Creo, green generally means it's good to go. So let's sketch. You see here what's happened is Creo puts in some nice reference lines that help us when we generate our sketches. Okay, so at the minute you can see the view is still sort of in a 3D orientation, but as when we're working in Sketch, everything's in 2D. We have this nice little button here called Sketch View, and that squares the screen up for us so that it's in 2D. And so for this one, we're drawing a cube that needs to be 30mm by 30mm. Okay, so what I'm going to do is come along up here. You'll see that when we're in sketch mode, you've got this little tab open called sketch, and what you can do is use all of these sketching tools to create any geometry that you can think up. Okay, but in this case we're going to be generating a cube, and if I go on this rectangle tool, you see there's a little drop down menu next to it. So I could create a square using this tool, but there's one that's a little bit easier for this circumstance. So center rectangle. So that means I specify the center of the rectangle, and then I can specify the corner. So you can see the symbols are quite useful in telling you what they actually produce. So if I click here, you see that the cursor's now changed, so that means that I'm now able to create some geometry. What I'm going to do is move the mouse into the middle of the screen, and what happens is these reference lines, the mouse sort of clicks to them. Okay, so if you bring the mouse close, you'll see that it sort of clicks. And what I want to do is be dead center on the screen. So if I bring it into the middle, it automatically clicks right into the middle there. So that will be the center of my square. So then to accept this point, we just left click, and then you'll see that I can now drag out my shape. And actually, what happens here, so I can change it to any shape that I want, but I want it to be square, and you see that at certain points I get this little sort of right angle symbol occurring, so that means that it's perfectly square. So I'm going to accept that by left clicking, and then to fully accept it, you need to then press the middle mouse button. You'll see that what happens is the area becomes shaded. So in Creo, a shaded area means that it can be extruded. If it's not shaded, then it means that there's something wrong with it, and you need to figure out what that is. So in this case, we have a square, and it needs to be 30mm for the length. So you see here, we've got a dimension. What you can do is if you just left click on these and hold, you can drag this and move it wherever you want it to be. And to change this, we just double click with the left mouse button, and that allows us to then enter some text. So for this one it's 30. Okay, so that's it for the first phase. So I've created a 2D shape and I'm happy with it, so I just click OK. So now we're back in the 3D environment. You can see that I've just got some 2D lines basically on the screen, and so we need to turn these into a 3D shape. So to do that, we come over to the model tree. You'll see here this is a history of everything that we've done in the software, and what you can do is you can click on these, and you'll see once I've highlighted it, it changes the color of it in the actual live screen, and then I'm going to click on this extrude button, and so now you can see we're starting to get some 3D geometry. And so at this point we can play around with this. There are various ways in which we can change the height. So we can click on this little ball with the left mouse button, hold, and we can drag it to wherever we want. We can double click here, add in a value, or if you come to the dialog box at the top, you'll see that it's changed to extrude, and we can enter a value in here. So 30. Okay, so that's just extruding it in a single way, but actually be quite useful in this case if we use this tool here. So this is symmetrical, so that means that it will leave these planes centered on our component. Okay, so I'm going to use this symmetrical tool, so you'll see that what it does is it extrudes it from that center line both ways by 15. It doesn't matter if you only go in one direction, but actually in this case it's quite useful to use this tool. Okay, so we just accept that. So now you can see that we've got our cube, the basis of our shape, and I can now rotate this around and have a look at it. Okay, so you can now see that we've got some 3D geometry in here, and if we have a look in the model tree, we've got this extrusion just here. Okay, so now what we need to do is add the holes onto each of these faces, and to do that we can basically just use the sketch tool and sketch a hole, and we can extrude that through. Now once you've got some 3D geometry and you click on the sketch tool, you'll find that you can make any of the faces here your sketching plane, so that's really useful for us. So I'm going to just click on this face here and click sketch. You see that Creo's put in some references for us. It's quite useful, and what we're going to do is square up the view, and now I just need to position a hole in the middle of this cube. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is use construction mode to help position the center hole for this face. Okay, so if you go in construction mode, this allows you to create geometry that will be ignored during the extrusion process, so it's really useful for just positioning features. So if I click on the line tool, what I'm going to do is just draw a line. So I want to snap to this corner, snap to this corner, and then I'm going to come out of construction mode. Now what I want to, the idea of using this line is that whatever happens to this shape, I can snap to the center of this line and the hole will always remain in the middle of this face. Okay, so if I go on the circle, click the middle here, click out, and then press the middle mouse button, we can then change the diameter of this to 8. And then we just, once we're happy with our sketch, we just click OK. Okay, so the extrusion tool is not just for adding material, we can also use it to remove material. So if we click extrude, you can see that what it's trying to do is add the material, but you see this little arrow here, if I click on that, it changes the direction, and you can see that it's automatically removing the material. And again, what we can do is we can change the depth of this, so that it goes all the way through. You could explicitly tell it how far to go, or if you come to this little dialog box at the top here, it has certain features, so you can tell it to go all the way through your component. Okay, so that's just through everything. So that's our first hole, and I'm just going to use the same process to create one on this face as well. So sketch, click here, sketch, let's go sketch view, construction line, middle mouse. So here what I've done is I've forgot to come out of construction mode, so what you can do is you can change this to a construction line. So if you just click on the line, you'll see this new little dialog box comes up, and what we need to do is go here and it says toggle construction, so that will take it out of construction, turn it into a geometry line. There we go. So if you forget, it's not the end of the world. So you can see here what it's done is given us a radius dimension. So obviously the radius is just half the diameter, but what we can do is we can change this so that it's a diameter just there. Change this to 8. click OK. And again, we just use the extrude tool, the same as before, change the direction and make sure that it goes through all. Okay, so we've got 2 of them now in place. Okay, now for the final hole, I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. I'm going to use the hole tool. So if I click on the hole tool here, what you then have to do is click on a face that you would like the hole to break through. So I want it to be on this top face here, and you can see that it gives us like a representation of a hole. So we can change the diameter of this hole to 8. And to position this, you'll see that we've got these 2 little broken square symbols. And what we need to do is put those, attach these to different faces so that we can reference from them. So if you hover over them and press and hold the left mouse button, you can then drag them to a surface. So I want to reference from this face here. So you see that the symbol changes to being basically a completed square, and that means that it's found a face that we can reference from. So if I let go now, you'll see that I get a distance from this face. So if this is going to be in the middle, this should be 15, and then we could do the same with this one here, with this face, and that should be 15. So that's in the middle of that face now. And again, for the depth, we can drag this down to whatever depth we want, but if we use this dialog box, we can tell it to go through everything. Okay. So we've now got the basic outline of our cube with the holes in all of the centers of the faces. So what we need to do now is round the corners. So there's a nice tool in here that lets us do that. So if you come to engineering in the toolbar along the top and just go round, we need to change this to 5. We can then select edges and it will round them for us. So if I select this edge here, you see that it adds a round. Now if you press and hold Control, you can then select multiple edges so that you can do them all at the same time. So click this one, this one, this one. You can let go of Control at any time just to move the screen to make it a bit more convenient. And let's do the bottom edge. There. And then to add the edges here, just go Control, that edge, that edge. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Just click OK. Right, and then there's a final feature that we need to add. So there's a small little chamfer around these holes. We also have a tool for that. So if we go chamfer, let's change this to 0.5, and then we just select this whole edge. So you can see it's just taken off that sharp edge around the hole. So we need to do that on all of them. So again, we just press Control and select each of the holes. Okay, so I think I've got all of them covered, and we'll just go OK. Okay, so that's the basic outline for the shape. We'll just do a final thing. We're going to change the colour of it. So if we go to View, in the top tab here, we can change the appearance. So if we click down here, we click on a colour, so let's change this to yellow. Okay, and then what we need to do is come down to the bottom here. So this is basically the selection filter. So we can choose part, so that means it will change the whole part to the colour, and then just click on the part with the left mouse button, and then press the middle mouse button, and that's changed it to yellow. And to save this now, what we need to do is just go File, Save, and you'll see that it says file name cube part, and hopefully it's in the correct location. If not, this is where you can choose where you'd like to save it. And you don't need to type anything in save to, okay? You just make sure that it's got a name and you're in the correct place, and you click OK. So that's how we produce the cube. Okay, so once we've produced the cube, we then need to go and produce the strut component. So to do that, we go from here, we can just go File, New, and you can see it says Part, and we just need to give it a relevant name. Okay, and just remember to untick the default template again, click OK, and change the units. Okay, so you see that now opened up a new window. Okay, so this part we're going to use some different techniques, so we're going to use some revolving techniques, so we can see how that works. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is produce the basic outline for this shape. So to do that, I'm going to use the sketch tool, click on this plane here, click sketch, and let's change it to sketch view. And now we'll draw a circle, center, and this has a diameter of 8. Click OK, and then we're going to extrude. So extrude, again we're going to go symmetrically to keep the planes in the middle, and this has a length of 90. Okay, so we click OK there. Now we need to do another sketch, so it has a thicker section within the middle. So what I'm going to do is click on this plane here again, click sketch, and then we'll go circle, and let's go to sketch view. Okay, we want to be in the middle there, so it's a bit thicker. So this actually has a diameter of 12. We'll click OK, and again we're going to use the extrude tool. Again, let's make it so it's symmetrical, and this one has a length of 70. Okay, so there's the basic shape, but what there is there's a cutout in this section, and so this is where we're going to use the revolve tool. So if we click on this plane here and go sketch and sketch view, you can see my view's in a slightly different orientation to what it says in the booklet, but it makes no difference. What I'm going to do is just add a reference in here, so click on this reference, and this edge is going to be really useful as a reference. Okay, and so we've got a basic cutout here, and it comes down here as an arc, so I'm going to use the arc tool there, there, and just here like that. And I need to change some of the dimensions. So in the drawing there's a dimension from here to here that's 60. So I go dimension there. So let me just explain how to use this dimension tool. So if you click on dimension, we click one point with the left mouse button, press and hold Control, then click the second point with the left mouse button, let go of Control, and then press the middle mouse button. And you'll see that that gives me a new dimension. So 60. Okay, let's just come out of the dimension tool, just press the middle mouse button twice. Okay, and we can move this arc if we click on it. Okay, so the radius is not actually specified, but we need to know the distance from here to the midpoint, to the middle of this shaft. So again, I'm going to add a dimension. So I'm going to select. So I'm going to click on this line, press Control, and select this reference line here, and then press the middle mouse button. Okay, so basically it's telling us that there's a conflict with the dimensions here, and that's fine. So we don't actually need this radius, so we can delete that. And then we can change this to 4. Okay, so now that matches what it says on the drawing. Okay, now what we need to do is create a complete section, otherwise there's not a lot we can do. So if we go line from there to there, you see now I've got this shaded area, so that means that I can use the tools to remove that material. And when we use the revolve tool, we should always use the center line. We need to add a center line. So if you click on center line, click here, and then add an axis, which will be revolved around. Okay, press the middle mouse button, and then I'm happy with that. I press OK. So with the sketch highlighted in the model tree, just press the revolve tool, and you'll see that it automatically removes that material. Okay. And then just to finish this shape off, there's a few chamfers that we need to add. So if we just go chamfer 0.5, and then there's a chamfer here, press Control here, here, here. Okay. And again, what we'll do is, so it gets a nice contrast, we'll change the colour of this. So if we go to View, Appearance, we'll pick this green. And again, we'll go along here and change this to, sorry, I just need to click on the colour, click Part, and then click on that and press the middle mouse button. So that part's completed. So I just need to make sure that we save this correctly. So File, Save. Make sure that you save it in the same location as your previous part. So we click OK. So now we've got these two parts. So we have the cube and then the strut as well. So what we need to do is now create an assembly using both of these parts. So to do that, we go File, New, Assembly. So let's just give this, so we'll call it Primer, use default template. Remember, we need to untick default template. So this time, rather than using a part, we're changing it to an assembly. So assemblies are where we import parts to construct our more complicated structures. Okay, so parts are individual, there's only one of them. Assemblies are where we use those parts to build up the more complex mechanism. Okay, so click OK, and again we need to change this to millimeters, and we'll click OK. So now we're in assembly mode, and basically you'll see that the screen is a little bit different to that of part. You'll see that we have this component section here, and so this is where we can add components in to form our assembly. So if we click on Assemble here, we can add our first part. You'll see that because I told Creo where everything needs to be saved, it's automatically opening up that place, and we've got two components here. So we've got the cube and we've got the strut. So I'm going to open up the cube. Okay, and you see that it's input it. And now the first component that you import into an assembly, it's important that you position it correctly. So if you come up here, what you need to do, so this is basically how you're going to position the part, and for the first component, just always say it to default. And you'll see that it's changed colour because it's constrained and it knows where it's positioning it. And we click OK. So we've got one of our parts in here. Now it's time to add a strut. So to do that, we go Assemble, click on the strut, and open the part. And you'll see that it brings it in. And what we've got is these little arrows that we can use to move and manipulate the component. So it's a nice idea to try and get it roughly in the position that you would like it to be. And now what we need to do is basically align it to this component. And to do that, we've got this little tab called Placement. And so this is where we can set our constraints on the part. And so the first thing, so you can see here, so placement 1, so it's waiting for me to input some information. So to align this strut to this hole, I think it's really useful if you align this axis with the axis of the hole. So that's what I'm going to do. So if I click this axis here, you'll see that now I've got this little line, so it's asking me where is this being assigned to. So if I click this axis, you see that it's making them coincident. So now if I move the screen, you'll see that they're perfectly in line with each other. Okay, and so the next thing I need to do is I need to add a constraint that's this face to this face, because then that will slot into that hole. So if I go new constraint, if I click this face here, you'll see that it's automatically put in that it's coincident. Okay, if for some reason it doesn't, you can change it. So if I wanted to, I could change it to a distance. So I could offset it by a certain distance, but actually coincident is what I need. And so once I'm happy with that, it's constrained, just click OK. So now we've got two of the parts in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is actually add another strut to this, coming out of this side. So I'll go assemble, strut, open. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just move this so that it's in roughly the correct position. Okay, so we can turn it. Doesn't need to be perfect. I think it just helps visualize where you're trying to attach things to. So let's go placement. Let's pick this axis, so it's coincident, so it knows that they're perfectly in line. New constraint. And let's go here to here. Okay, so that's all fully constrained, and we click OK. So there's two of them. So now what I need to do is add a cube onto each side here. So you can see here it's putting a distance. That's not actually what I want, so I can change it in this dialog box to coincident. Okay. Okay. So again, I just need to add two more struts and a cube. Okay, so now I've got the base for the 3D cube, and so now we just need to add some struts into these holes of these cubes. Okay, so we can just manipulate these. Okay, so I'll just repeat that process for the next 3. And then finally, we just need to add some cubes to the tops of these, and then the struts that link them. If you make a mistake at any time, you can delete one of these constraints. Okay, so with this one you can see that it's slightly rotated a little bit, so what I need to do is make it so that we remove this rotation. So if I click here, I want those two faces to be in line with each other. Okay. So now I'm just going to add the final struts into this. Okay, so once everything's completed, we've got our cube fully done. We need to remember to save our file. So just save, okay. And you'll notice that obviously we've got a lot of components in here. There's a lot of planes, a lot of axes. It looks very messy. What you can do is you can come to this little dialog box here and you can turn all those off. So that makes things look a little bit better for you. Also you can play around with some of the views up here. So at the minute it's just on shading. Shading with edges is quite a useful tool because it shows you all the edges that you can pick up on as well. Okay, so that's how you complete the Creo Primer.